If you spend any time at all tracking major cyber attacks, the big ones, ransomware, massive phishing campaigns, you realize pretty quickly these aren't just isolated operations.
No, not at all.
They're running on a professional, almost industrial scale criminal infrastructure.
Yeah.
We're talking about Bulletproof Hosting, or BPH.
Right.
And this isn't just someone, accidentally overlooking an abuse report. This is a deliberate, paid service designed to keep criminal operations online no matter what. We're seeing a huge renaissance in this market, and the stakes are just massive, hundreds of millions in damages globally.
It's the absolute foundational layer of the cybercrime economy, and that's what we're really going to dig into today.
Okay.
Our mission is to dissect the mechanics of BPH, how these hosts create these firewalls of deniability with shell companies, how they exploit weaknesses in the internet's core plumbing, and how they let malware like Radamanthys and Venomrat just flourish.
And on the flip side, we have to talk about the response.
Oh, absolutely. We're also going to look at the unprecedented global response, these huge law enforcement efforts like Operation Endgame, which are designed to finally, hopefully, dismantle this entire business model.
And to do that, we've got some incredible source material.
Yeah.
A really detailed threat intelligence report that maps out the tactics of hundreds of these providers. We also have some fantastic analysis from our partners at www.breached.company.
They've been tracking these massive law enforcement actions like the crazy RDP takedown with just, remarkable precision.
All right, let's unpack this business model.
Let's start with the definition because it's so important. Bulletproof hosting at its core refers to internet providers who deliberately, and that's the key word, deliberately, they ignore, resist, or just flat out fail to respond to legitimate abuse reports. It's not negligence. They are selling protection, a shield that keeps things like command and control servers, phishing kits, all that nasty stuff online.
It really feels like a problem that's as old as the internet itself. Where did this all start?
The term BPH, it really came into its own back in 2006. With the infamous Russian business network, the RBN.
I remember that name.
Oh, yeah. They weren't hiding at all. They were notorious for enabling something like $150 million in fraud. That was the monolithic era. Think of Macalo, shut down in 2008. At the time, they were responsible for something like 75% of all global spam.
Just one entity.
One entity. And of course, you had Cyberbunker literally operating out of an old NATO bunker.
Incredible. But those operators, they were kind of easy targets once law enforcement finally decided to move on them.
Exactly. Their visibility was their biggest weakness. And that's why the modern BPH marketing strategy is so revealing. You see them openly advertising things like offshore DMCA ignored hosting.
They're not even hiding it.
They're signaling loud and clear that illegal content, pirated stuff, it's all welcome. Resistance to takedowns is their main selling point.
And this is where it gets really fascinating looking at the evolution. It's moved from those physical bunkers to something far more fragmented, designed to just completely defeat any investigation.
We're seeing a huge pivot away from those monolithic operations. Now it's all about these sophisticated separation of liabilities models.
What does that mean exactly?
Criminals figured out that if one company owns everything, the IPs, the servers, the registration, it's too easy to take down. So now they use these complex webs of shell corporations, IP brokers, resellers, all to create these, firewalls of plausible deniability.
If I send an abuse report, who even gets it?
Well, that's the game. The investigator contacts the data center, who legally points to their customer, which is a shell company in some difficult jurisdiction.
Ah, I see.
And that shell company points to the actual server owner, who is completely gone, untraceable. It's a game of corporate hot potato. It's brilliant from their perspective.
The Medialand LLC case is a perfect example of this.
It is. Medialand was sanctioned in 2025 for helping groups like Lockbit. But their structure meant investigators had to go after Medialand Technology, Data Center Kirishi, and ML Cloud.
All separate companies.
All separate subsidiaries, often in different countries, just to shut down what was basically one operation. It forces law enforcement to play whack-a-mole with legal entities.
And because this stuff exists, it is so resilient. It just enables the entire cybercrime as a service ecosystem.
Right.
We're talking malware distribution like Radamanthys, Venomrat, and even the darkest stuff like the CSAM distribution and the crazy RDP case. It all needs infrastructure that just will not go down.
And to keep it up, they exploit the very foundation of how the internet is designed. Which brings us to their technical evasion techniques.
Okay, let's talk about the network plumbing. How do they pivot so fast when a target is identified?
It starts with getting their own autonomous system numbers, or ASNs. Think of an ASN like a digital zip code. It's a unique ID that lets a network route traffic online. Legitimate ISPs have them, but BTH operators get them too, and that gives them total control over huge ranges of IP addresses.
So if you block one of their IP addresses,
They just move the malicious service to the next IP in their own digital zip code, instantly. It's like a self-healing network for criminals.
that makes perfect sense. So for a CISO listening to this, what are the red flags to look for in, say, the WHOIS data for a shady ASN?
The biggest one is seeing disposable or free email addresses for abuse contacts.
Like Gmail or Proton.
Exactly. Proton, Gmail, Tutamail. Legitimate companies use their own domain-linked addresses. A free email for your abuse desk basically screams, "We have no intention of ever responding." We also see them using corporate loopholes, setting up shop in places like Russia, Ukraine, or even U.S. states like Wyoming or Delaware, where oversight is just minimal. HostType LLC is a great example. A suspicious Wyoming address, but they operate totally overseas.
But the really clever evasion is when they stop using their own shady infrastructure and start hiding in plain sight.
That's infrastructure laundering. It's a term for when threat actors rent IPs from mainstream cloud providers. Think Amazon, Microsoft using stolen accounts or mules. Then they use CNME records to point their malicious sites to that legitimate US IP space.
And why is that so effective?
Because you can't block Amazon's entire cloud.
Right, it's too big to block.
Exactly. You disrupt huge amounts of legitimate business traffic. By laundering their sites onto those trusted IPs, they make themselves impossible to block at a network level.
And we also see this with dynamic DNS, or DDNS. It's like a mini decentralized BPH network.
Absolutely. Providers like afraid.org rent out thousands of subdomains. Threat actors use them for command and control. The C2 endpoints are constantly shifting, which makes them incredibly hard to track. And this is a tactic used by top-tier groups, even nation-states like APT29 and Gamaredon.
And finally, they control the front door to main registration. Can you walk us through this idea of a bulletproof registrar?
The poster child for this is a company called NiceNick out of Hong Kong. They've become the go-to registrar for a lot of threat actors, including the ones behind the scattered spider attacks.
What makes them so special?
Their policy, it's frustrating for defenders. NiceNick requires you to have a legal power of attorney over a brand to submit a takedown request for an impersonation site.
Wait, what? So if someone registers a dozen domains pretending to be Chase Bank or PayPal,
You'd need a massive, coordinated legal effort from all of those corporations just to ask for a takedown. It creates a legal nightmare and guarantees those malicious domains stay online way, way longer than anywhere else.
the sheer scale of this evasion, shifting ASNs, shell companies hiding in the cloud, it's clear that standard firewalls just aren't going to cut it anymore.
Not even close.
It requires a whole different level of intelligence to track this. That's why security teams need really robust preemptive tools. We highly recommend checking out the specialized resources available at CISOmarketplace.services. It's about leveling up your security stack to see and stop this kind of infrastructure laundering before it hits you. Okay, now that we've got the mechanics down, let's look at some specific hosts. Alex Host in Moldova seems like a classic example.
Oh, it is. Alex Host. That's ASN 2019. It's huge. Controls nearly 10,000 active IPs. And they openly advertise that they ignore DMCA complaints. They facilitate piracy sites, free movies, that sort of thing.
But what's the technical red flag there?
It's their network structure. They only have 23 peering partners. Now compare that to a major enterprise host, which might have, I don't know, over 1,800.
Why does that low number matter so much?
It means they've deliberately isolated themselves. They don't rely on the major network backbones that would normally respond to abuse reports. That isolation is a feature, not a bug. It minimizes their exposure to pressure.
Okay, let's jump over to Asia. Shinjiru in Malaysia. They show how just slowing things down can be just as effective.
Absolutely. Shinjiru has a documented 12-day abuse response time, but then their policy gives clients another 10-day grace period to fix the problem.
So a takedown takes almost 2 weeks.
At a minimum. For a fast-moving malware campaign, 2 weeks is an eternity. They can deliver the payload, grab the data, and be gone long before the server ever gets taken down. And we know they host tons of phishing pages for places like Chase Bank. Plus, they take Bitcoin. It's the full BPH package.
Right.
We also see Fani's networks in the Netherlands. Even with a 4-day response time, their marketing was, no need to worry about DMCA complaints now.
Still way too slow.
Far too slow, and we saw them try to evade scrutiny by transferring operations over to another provider, Spectre IP. They're always moving.
These patterns are everywhere in the threat intel data, right? Low IP density, unstable peering, and these crazy response times.
The most extreme case might be CTG Server Limited, as 1FU2194, a 24-day abuse response time. 24 days. They're known for heavy use of domain generation algorithms, or DGAs, which makes their C2 endpoints almost impossible to block.
In tracking all this fragmentation, it just underscores why the kind of deep analysis our partners at www.breach.company provide is so vital for defenders. You have to stay ahead of this constant churn. It's a pretty bleak picture, but let's pivot to the counteroffensive, because the scale of the international law enforcement action here suggests the tide might actually be turning.
This brings us to Operation Endgame. It was launched in 2022 and is still ongoing. This is, it's arguably the largest international effort ever to combat this kind of infrastructure.
Who's involved?
It's led by Europol and Eurojust. You've got an 11-nation coalition, over 30 private sector partners. This isn't just a raid, it's a systematic campaign to dismantle the entire business.
The big moment was the crazy RDP takedown in November of 2025. That felt like a coordinated strike against the entire ecosystem.
It was catastrophic for them. Authorities seized over 1,000 servers globally. 83 of those were in the Netherlands alone. They took down 20 criminal domains, and all of that infrastructure was linked to more than 80 ongoing investigations, everything from ransomware to CSAM distribution.
And they took out 3 major malware families at the same time?
Yeah.
That's true systemic disruption.
Exactly. They hit Radamanthys, an info stealer responsible for, get this, 86 million data theft events.
Wow.
They also hit Venomrat, a remote access Trojan. That led directly to the arrest of the main suspect in Greece, who had access to over 100,000 crypto wallets. And the Elysium botnet was neutralized too. They targeted the enablers, not just the criminals.
And they're also hitting the money trail hard with government sanctions.
Sanctions are a huge tool because they cut off access to legitimate financial systems. We already mentioned Medialand LLC. They were sanctioned by the US, UK, and Australia. Another big one was FUNLL in May 2025. They were sanctioned for infrastructure laundering that enabled massive pig butchering scams.
Defrauding U.S. consumers of over $200 million.
That's right.
But what's just wild is how fast these groups adapt when the sanctions hit.
Look at the Agiza group. They were sanctioned in July 2025. Within days, they had already pivoted. They set up new front companies like Hypercore Ltd in the UK and new entities in Serbia and Uzbekistan. They were actively building new corporate firewalls to keep operating. It shows this is an ongoing battle.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this, someone on the front lines of defense? Law enforcement is hitting the business model, but you need proactive defense that assumes the attack is already happening.
Proactive is the only way. The CISA guidance, Bulletproof Defense, it recommends things like enhanced Know Your Customer protocols for ISPs. Crucially, defenders need to be doing ASN-based blocking, not just IP-based, to counter that rapid migration we talked about.
And you have to look at your outbound traffic.
Yes. Robust filtering of outbound traffic is key to spotting those C2 communications leaving your network, which is a huge sign of an active breach.
It's a breach mentality. You have to move faster.
100%. Go review your historical logs right now for connections to the Operation Endgame IOCs, the indicators of compromise. They're public on ThreatFox. You have to stay vigilant because they will always try to hide entrusted services like CDNs that are just too big to block.
So what does the future look like? Can this sustained pressure actually bankrupt the BPH model?
The academic research suggests their profit margins are surprisingly thin.
Really?
Yeah. So, yes, sustained pressure sanctions, seizures, making it more expensive to operate, it is absolutely key. However, the move toward these non-monolithic operations, hiding behind legitimate Western cloud services and constantly rebranding, that challenge is only going to get harder.
So the core takeaway here is that the fight against bulletproof hosting is a long-term campaign. It's not a single action. Crazy RDP is down, some key people are facing sanctions, but the next bulletproof host is already spinning up servers as we speak.
Which brings up a really provocative question. Given the speed of this infrastructure laundering, the rapid rebranding we saw with the Agiza group, What specific regulatory changes do we need to target the peering relationships,
Mhm.
the actual support scaffolding that keeps these criminal networks connected to the internet? How do you force legitimate networks to stop connecting to the illegitimate ones?
That is the systemic question we have to answer. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the infrastructure that powers so much of modern cybercrime. And a huge thank you to our partners at www.breached.company for their amazing intelligence, and to CISOmarketplace.services for supporting the show and helping organizations get the tools they need. Until next time, keep learning.